All right, welcome football fans and connoisseurs of podcasts everywhere. This is our Friday episode at the Call Sheet Daily, our hot route episode with your host, Kevin Smith, and Pez from Pez's Picks, my good man who's been joining me on Fridays the last couple of weeks for these broader conversations about football and life. Great way to just kick around some interesting subjects as you head off into your weekend. So let me bring him in right now, my man. Bill Pez, welcome, Pez.
Coach, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to share our life stories and the lessons we've learned along the way, which as two guys with very fruitful lives, we've had a lot of joy, but a lot of pain. And we're here to share the pain, Coach. Everybody wants to hear the pain. As a gambler, you learn from painful stories, and I've got a lot of them. You as an athlete and coach, you have a lot of them as well.
Yes, I think that we are really trying to craft this Friday show into something where you can share some life lessons and you can talk about things that are interesting universally to people in general, but also that maybe we can impart some wisdom. If that may sound too like it's got too much gravitas to it, but something along those lines that people can take away. So let's start with this today, real quick. You and I both history teachers, and I like sometimes to work some history in. On this date, it is May 23rd. On this date in history, in 1934, the bank robbers Bonnie and Clyde were shot dead by police in Louisiana in a police ambush. Police had been tracking them on the run for weeks and finally caught up with them May 23rd, 1934, shot them dead, Bonnie and Clyde. They have been immortalized. Great movie with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. They've become cult heroes in a way. My question to you is this. Let's start the show with this conversation. Why do some criminals or otherwise villains become folk heroes, become really popular in whether it's the imagination of the American public or literally with the American public?
Coach, I've got an angle on this, and I compare it to gambling. It's an enticing, intoxicating feeling to live on the edge, to live with risk, to live with adrenaline pumping that you're either going to have your greatest day or possibly your worst day. Bonnie and Clyde, if I'm correct, Mrs. Bonnie, whatever her last name is, was a very attractive lady, if I'm correct. And
yep.
If you go through history, Doc Holliday and his partner, girlfriend, people are interested in couples living on the edge, living to the edge of the world, to the risk, pushing it, and it's an intoxicating thing. Coach, what I'm getting at, it's a sexual thing. I think people are aroused by this. They're turned on by this type of behavior, and it's exciting. I mean, I'm a fan, Coach. I mean, as you know, I'm a gambler, and I have a lovely wife, and I think part of the reason she was initially attracted to me was this gambling edge. You're living life a little bit on the dark side, a little bit of the underbelly, and that's an exciting thing that most Americans maybe don't get into. For myself, with gambling being legal, it's kind of lost that a little bit, Coach. It's not as exciting anymore now that it's legal. I feel like it's almost like playing slot machines at this point, and we're benefiting from that in Pez's Picks. So I think the lines and the way that people are betting has opened up some avenues for people finding some holes and finding some deals out there that didn't used to be out there when it was a little bit more of the underbelly.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. There is an attraction to people who are willing to cross a line that most others won't, or at least a fascination. And Bonnie and Clyde, too. I mean, they were sticking it to the man. They were robbing banks during the Great Depression when the banks were the source of so many people's misery. So they became folk heroes for that as well. Simply, they were almost heroic in their actions because of whom they were targeting. And the mafia's kind of earned that same thing over the years. You and I growing up in Southern New Jersey, I worked in Atlantic City for a long time. I got to know people who were involved in mafia type activities, and they were very popular. And you think to yourself, these guys are criminals on one hand, but on the other hand, the way they were going about their crimes gave them a mystique and a popularity with people that was interesting.
Well, I totally agree. And if it was Bonnie and Clyde being ugly, Coach, or unattractive, I don't think they'd been as famous. If it was Clyde and Dexter, I don't think we're talking about these people. I think part of it is this excitement of living on the edge, being free, not living by any rules. And I've had a taste of this, Coach. I've had a little bit of this life, and very exciting. And I was shocked at how my life changed when I got a little bit more into this darker side. And maybe I'm a little bit proud of it, Coach. I never hurt anybody. Gambling's legal now. So was it wrong in the old days when it wasn't? I don't think so. I'm not judging myself at all.
Interesting. Well, so that's our history tidbit, but I'm going to give you something else to celebrate here, Pez. As a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you had a nice little victory, albeit off the field, on Thursday when it was announced that the Tush Push will remain a legal play in the NFL. How you feel about that as an Eagles fan?
Well, we talked last week, Coach, and I'm not a conspiracy theory believer for the most part, but I did feel there was a conspiracy to take down the Philadelphia Eagles' dominance. And this was an attempt, Coach, and I know this is a Pittsburgh Steelers network, and you're a fan yourself. I hate to insult you, but they voted against it. That's soft, Coach. That's soft. What's the deal here? If you can't stop that play, then you start doing the play. I don't think there's anything illegal or cheating in what they're doing. If it was that easy, every team would be doing this. And the team's been assembled to play that style. And I compare it to the old Pittsburgh Steelers days with Jerome Bettis and pounding the ball, and nobody complained when Bettis was running up the middle. I think it's whining, Coach, and I think it's a sad state of affairs. And I hope you're contacting Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they got to check themselves a little bit here. What's the deal with this?
I put in a call today. I'm sure he'll get right back to me, man. So
he better, Coach. He better. And I'll tell you what bothered me is it was close to turning over.
Yeah.
I believe it was two teams away.
Votes. Yep.
How would they enforce this? Could a defender then not push another defender in tackling somebody? Could you not push like a blocker, maybe going through like, in a special teams play? Ridiculous, Coach. Ridiculous. And proud of the Philadelphia Eagles to send in Jason Kelsey, who went in as the messenger with our team to explain that they had to keep this play. And if it was that easy, why isn't everybody else doing it? Why aren't offensive teams copying this? And we've been doing it for years. It's obviously not an easy thing. We've assembled a quarterback and an offensive line and now a running back that this style of play, it's indicative of what we put together. So beat it or do it yourselves. I'm disgusted by it, Coach. It's lit a flame in the Philadelphia area. Now, when this vote happened, we took a look at the season odds to win the Super Bowl. Philadelphia Eagles were about 750 before this vote. After the vote, they dropped down to plus 650, plus 600. So, of course, this gives us an advantage, and I'm happy, Coach. Go ahead and stop it. Let's see you stop it. We challenge you to. And if the league does do this, Coach, I'm asking the FFS and legal team to file some charges there. I think it's a point where we got to protect these Philadelphia Eagles and Pez's picks as an Eagles fan. I'm waiting for it, Coach. I'm waiting for the calls. We need some support from management on this one.
So it'll be interesting. Speaking of Pez's picks, your ability to gamble on just about anything these days is in play. It seems it'll be fascinating to see if they run a line on whether or not the Eagles run the Tush Push on the first play of their season against Dallas, or even better yet, when they play Green Bay, who brought the issue to the table to be voted on. It'd be fascinating if the Eagles just simply thumbed their nose at the Packers and just decided, all right, we're going to run this. If not the first play, we're going to run this a lot. That'd be a great line. The number of times the Eagles run the Tush Push, the over under against Green Bay, be an interesting prop bet.
Well, I think it opens up the door for the Eagles to expand on this as well. Everyone's going to be focusing on it. We can put some more gadget plays in with this, and it ticks the clock. Yourself and we've spoken for years. My philosophy in football: don't turn the ball over, control the clock, control possession of the ball, and that's what we're doing. And I don't know why every team isn't doing this. I don't understand it. It doesn't seem too hard to me, Coach. You're the football guy. You're the X's and O's guy. Is it that hard? I mean, why aren't they doing it?
I think it's a thing where the Eagles have figured out how to do it extremely well, and they've put time into it. And other teams see it as a novelty or a gadget, and they don't tend to emphasize those things the same way. But you mentioned expanding on it. I really think that you've got the opportunity now to take one of those receivers who's not necessarily involved in the push, so to speak, and bring him in jet motion, and now threaten the edge with him. And suddenly you'll begin to see defenses put in even more of a bind as they commit all their resources to stopping the quarterback. And suddenly now they're being threatened with a perimeter sweep. The possibilities now grow. But you and I both know what this is really about. I mean, obviously, yes, it's about the Eagles. It's aesthetics and it's TV ratings. They don't like the optics of the play. It feels rugby-ish, this big scrum in the middle of the field. And imagine if Philadelphia was able to average 2.5 yards per carry doing this, and they tush push their way down the field. The NFL they'd hate it. They'd go nuts because it would look aesthetically unpleasing. It'd be bad for TV. Things all come back to ratings. It's very much about that.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, Coach, but I think that play is one of the most exciting plays every time the Eagles run it. Everybody knows what's going to happen. Both teams know what's coming. Both teams line up and get into this gladiator type of fight, this ring, and it comes down to a brawl. I mean, it's a fight. In football, I think that's a super exciting thing. We have had games where we pounded the ball down the field, similar to what the Pittsburgh Steelers used to do and what a lot of football teams used to do in the 90s, early 2000s. I love that style of play. I think it's more attractive than 3 and outs, throwing the ball, missing receivers, and punting. And I wonder if they're going to have to do that. Yourself and I, we've discussed. You as a coach, I witnessed it. Went up against a team from Millville High School one time. They ran a jet sweep with a guy a D1 Alabama type of stud. He was 20 yards down the field before your team even turned. Why wouldn't they run that, right? Why not do it? Why not use your advantage to do that? Just like when Shaquille O'Neal was playing, you pound the ball to him underneath and go ahead and try and stop it. Coach, we love it. This lights a fire under the Eagles. I think it's motivated us even more. Offensive line takes pride in this. And Green Bay Packers, I can't wait, Coach. We've already put our first NFL bet out. Philadelphia Eagles -7.5, taking down the cockroaches of Dallas. And I love it. I think we are primed. Of course, injury is always a threat to everybody, but we are primed to make another run this year. And I don't see anybody stopping us, Coach. I'm going to call it right here. Super Bowl return. We'll see who we're playing, and we'll make that decision when we get there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to hold you to that. All right. Now, let's stay with this theme for a moment. We start off talking about Bonnie and Clyde living on the edge, talking about the tush push, which some people think is, if not illegal, then maybe a little bit unethical, bends the rules a hair. What about what happened in golf this past week? Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, both right before the PGA tournament, were had to make some change-ups to their clubs because they were found to have illegal drivers in their bags. And there was no penalty because they actually switched clubs, and then they went out and Scheffler won the darn thing. What's your take on that, man? Does this feel like cheating to you?
Well, Coach, I've referenced this person on Pez's Picks podcast a lot. In the gambling world, we try to keep everybody secret. We give people the privacy. Some people still look at gambling as maybe not a clean kind of thing. We're going to reference this guy, and you know this person as the 20-year ago 5th string JMU punter, who is the best golfer we know, and I believe you know who I'm talking about. A man who knows data, knows facts. Okay, so I discussed this with him. He's my golf guru. He's a scratch golfer. He told me this has happened times in the past. It happened to Hideki Matsuyama. He pulled up an article to share with me. He had like a painted target on his driver, and it's happened. And they generally don't announce this. And he explained to me, as a golfer, it's not cheating, that when you use a driver, the shaft gets floppy or looser, which gives you more whip. And they decided to start testing that to try to limit the kind of smash it down there and wedge it on the green and kind of a boring style of golf. So he suggested to me this isn't cheating. Now, I have my own viewpoint, Coach. I golf. I'm a gambler and an athletic guy. I think it's cheating, right? These guys must know their equipment isn't up to snuff. They've got electronic data equipment in their house and trucks. They have to know their club. It might not meet the standard, and they don't check everybody every week. It's a random thing, and if you're caught, you just can't use the club. You're not punished. I compare it to pine tar on a bat, or some sort of Vaseline and on a pitcher, juicing up the ball, maybe even Brady deflating the ball. It's an advantage, and my guess is the higher level players are more able to do this. They have more tech, more equipment, and they have more mojo, right? Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy knew they were not sitting them out of that tournament. They're not going to sit them out of a major. I think golf needs to address this. We need a little bit more transparency. Maybe test every player's driver before every major tournament. Sounds fair to me.
If you want to raise some intrigue, you could do it the way other sports do, right? Like you mentioned pine tar on a bat. I mean, if you're of a certain age, you'll remember the famous George Brett episode where he hits a walk-off homer, or he hits a home run in the bottom of the ninth. It was in New York, the top of the ninth, to give Kansas City a lead against the New York Yankees, and the Yankees ask them then to the umpires to measure the pine tar on his bat. You can't have pine tar more than 18 inches from the handle on your bat. And they measure it and they call him out. So he's out, right? You've seen it in hockey where an opposing coach will ask them to measure the curve on an opponent's blade. And if the curve is beyond regulation, there's a 2-minute minor. There's a penalty attached. Imagine if now in golf, you could allow for an opposing golfer to request a measurement or a test of some sort on an opponent's club. Probably not during the match, but let's say you play round 2 with Scheffler and you're looking at his club and you're like, I don't think that's legal. And then after the round, you ask the PGA to test it. And then they assess, a 3-stroke penalty to Scheffler as a result. That would be great drama.
Phenomenal, Coach. I mean, I think we're ready for this. I think if you're trying to use an unfair advantage, you're cheating. And I think you need to be punished for that. It is your job to not take illegal equipment into any sporting event. I wonder, Coach, I'm going to ask you, and I know this is something in the higher level football, whether it be college, maybe even high school, especially in pro, receivers have these gloves that they can basically pick up the ball with a flat palm. Is this an advantage? Is this something we also need to take a look at? I throw the ball around with my son, catching that ball with bare hands, very difficult. Is this something we need to look at here, Coach? And is this maybe a new conspiracy we can start here on our new hot route, and maybe get the league looking at this? Maybe.
Well, my son's got a pair of those gloves. They're unbelievably tacky. They have so much tack on them. It's hard to drop a ball when you're wearing those gloves, but they're all legal now. Back in the day, before all these gloves were popular, you had Stickum, which was essentially like a rubber cement that guys would put on their hands and on their wrists, etc. They ended up outlawing that. Now you've got these gloves that these companies make that I'm not saying it's the exact equivalent, but they're pretty darn close. Those are all legal. The NFL has ruled that stuff to be legal. Youth football says it's legal, etc. I don't know what the equivalent is. Everybody's looking for an advantage, right? Like, let's be honest. We played Ocean City High School. Before we turfed our field, we had a crappy grass field that we had to practice on because we didn't have a legit practice field. And we would often, by the middle of the season, much of the middle of the field had turned to dirt. And we weren't the fastest team in the world. If we had a fast team coming in, you referenced Millville. If we had Millville coming in, we'd have the city turn the sprinklers on the night before the game and just bog that thing down and try to slow them down. Now, is that cheating? Or are we just kind of like trying to find an advantage within the, maybe within the parameter of the rules?
Home field advantage is home field advantage. Fenway Park, I mean, these type of things I think are a different situation. Coach, we had a similar, extremely odd equipment cheating situation this past winter. Pez's picks were global, Coach. We bet on everything. Ski jumping, where they go down the ramp and they launch and they have that weird pose, head first, arms back. Huge sport in Europe. Huge gambled sport in Europe. They have regulations on how wide or how thick the crotch of the suit is, Coach. This is how high tech they are in the skiing industry. The crotch can only have a certain amount of material before the season. Every participant on the tour is measured in their suit, and they attach electronic devices that alert, I don't know what the heck it is, a satellite, if they're altered or cut. They caught the two best jumpers. I think they were Finnish or Danish or one of those Scandinavian people that can ski real well. They caught them mid-season with extra baggage in the crotch, coach. And I watched video of it. They had a wing down there, and they were getting probably an extra 10 or 15 yards. Banned, I believe, for the year. It shook up the ski world like we've never seen it. It's generally a very honest and very gentlemanly sport. Blew it up. The Scandinavians are generally the least cheating people. I think we're looking at the same kind of situation in golf. Something needs to be done.
Crotchgate. I love it, man.
Crotchgate.
Yeah.
Crotchgate was one. I want my money back, coach. I lost some money on these dudes earlier in the season jumping in Sweden. I want my money back. FFSN legal team, get on that too.
If all else fails and you're trying to cheat, you can always go the Tanya Harding route and just try to whack your opponent. That's the most crude form of just trying to gain an advantage. Just whack her in the knee right there.
Shocking story. Hard to believe still that happened.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, let's talk about one more subject. Baseball is off to an interesting start. An unbelievable amount of parity so far in the baseball world. And you were sharing some interesting thoughts with me as we were talking before the show about how you think that algorithms and analytics and things like that are really starting to ruin sports and entertainment. What's the connection between these two here?
Well, and you know this, coach, as a football guy, the NFL invests a ton of money and hires some very intelligent people to put together a schedule that's going to create parity in the league. They want teams from all regions to be competitive as deep into the season as possible. The schedule is crafted that way. It's not a schedule crafted to be fair. I mean, let's face it. The Giants have the hardest schedule coming up in this next season in the league, and they stink. The Philadelphia Eagles have the third or fourth hardest schedule, and the Super Bowl champions. So there's an intentional, deliberate method to try to have parity. And we've seen this develop over the years. It's something that we know, and it's an entertainment league, and maybe it makes it more fun and maybe makes it more challenging. I suspect baseball has begun to do that. I've been following baseball as a fan and in the gambling world for decades now, coach. It's a brutal sport to bet, but I think back to the New York Yankees, the Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, the dominant years about 20 years ago, where they might lose 20 or 25 games in a season. At that time, I don't think this type of scheduling was in play. I don't think they were thinking in this way in baseball. There was a time where you would have to lay $1,200 to win 100 on a July Yankees game. I don't think we're going to see that anymore. And if we look at the standings this year, and it's why we're ahead, coach. We're going to pat ourselves on the back. We're at about 65% right now on baseball bets, but we're not putting a ton of action in when parity is the worst thing for gambling. It's literally a death blow to the gambling world. When you look at the American League, you've got, from the Yankees all the way down to the Rays, they're separated by 7 games. When we go to the American West, every team, all 5 are within 7 games of first place. There maybe are 3 or 4 donkey teams this year. Even with, the Phillies are pulling away a tiny bit from some people in the National League. But when we look 1/3 through the season, there's no telling who the dominant team is in Major League Baseball. So for a gambler, when every team or the majority of teams are somewhere between 56 and 49% winning average, that's a death blow, coach. That's an utter death blow. It's hard to find an advantage when everybody is winning on a regular basis or about half of the time. And I have a strong suspicion that they have done that, and baseball has kind of bought into this algorithm system and making their schedule.
Bad for gamblers, but great for the league because parity keeps fan bases invested, keep all your teams in it as long as you can, and everybody keeps going to the ballpark and watching on TV. Here's an amazing statistic, and this is something that the league, this is football now, not baseball, but this is something the league must be thrilled about. Mike Tomlin's been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 17 seasons. In those 17 seasons, he has only coached 1 game where the Steelers have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Their ability, now he's never had a losing season, their ability to stay relevant by being at least decent. I mean, he's obviously had some great teams. He's never had bad teams. At worst, he's had mediocre teams that have been in the playoff hunt until the very end. Only one game that he's ever been eliminated from playoff contention. That is phenomenal for the ratings. That is phenomenal for fan interest. That is phenomenal for competitive balance, which you hear him talk about. And if they're using algorithms and if they're using some sort of, I don't want to say analytics or whatever to achieve that, then they're getting what they desire. They're reaching the ultimate goal there.
And it's not a very difficult thing to do. They use supercomputers and they use stat and analytical people that, they do this for a living. They have degrees in this stuff from, those good schools, Harvard and Yale, that I've been to, Coach, but only to a couple parties. But I totally know they're doing this. They hit enter, and that computer can punch out 10,000 seasons with different schedules and give them the results of every team and help them make this schedule like it is. And we picked up a little bit on this last year. The Seattle Mariners were awful, Coach. They had a decent pitching staff. They were hitting about 210 and were winning ball games. And there was a point we announced we're going to bet against them almost every day. And coming down the stretch, that team tanked. They were just pitiful. And I think the same thing's happening again this year. Seattle Mariners are in first place, good pitching staff. But when we look at their batting average, they're coming in at 236. That is not a first place team batting average, right? And I think when you think about Seattle, that's a big market out there. You lose Seattle, I don't know. Is there any other team in the Pacific Northwest? I mean, you go to Montana, you go to Oregon, you go, you got to get down to California before you get another baseball team. So I suspect that they do help teams. Hurricane Katrina, every gambler knew. The New Orleans Saints were going to have a great year that year. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. I remember that year. We talked about it before the season started. The league kind of announced they were going to kind of help that team out. And what do you know? They end up winning the Super Bowl, if I'm correct. Yep. Atlanta Falcons, when they lost Michael Vick, same situation. The next year, I believe they lost in the Super Bowl to Tom Brady and the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the better comebacks in Super Bowl history. So is it enjoyable? Is it fun? I believe so. But as an investor in sports gambling, you have to pick up on these things, and you kind of have to use the system to your advantage. And I mean, that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do here. We don't bet the Eagles a lot, Coach. We don't bet the Eagles. We tell everybody emotion is the worst motivator in gambling. We try never to bet them because I think they're going to win every week, right? So that puts me in a position. The team I've won the most money on in my betting career, Pittsburgh Steelers, like you said, a machine to get in the playoffs and a home field advantage like probably no other team. I love their style of play. I love the Mike Tomlin kind of character it brings to that team, and that's the type of team that we look to bet on.
Emotion is the enemy of reason. One of my favorite sayings. I used it many times as a football coach. We're going to pick up on this conversation next week when we get into talking about AI. I've read some really interesting things about AI lately, and I want to be able to expound on that a little bit. But that'll be a next week conversation. All right. Any final thoughts, Pez, before we go?
Well, and next week, let's pick up on this, Coach. I think analytics and this whole thing is ruining movies. I think analytics, I don't think they're using AI because the writers, they fought against this thing. But analytics, have you ever seen a Netflix movie that's good, Coach? This is what I'm getting at. Netflix produces crap, and they're the biggest movie studio in the history of the world. And obviously, they're getting views. They're making money. I think they market these movies to a general audience. There's kind of a mayonnaise type of thing to their movies. They don't want to insult other cultures and other countries. And I don't know. We need to get back to Tarantino movies, Coach. I know you're a fan as well as I am.
Absolutely. All right. So, yeah, absolutely. Let's pick up on that next week. All right, Pez, Memorial Day weekend. Anything exciting going on?
I talked about this guy on my other pod too, Coach. I have some friends that served in the military. David M. Tapper, Navy SEAL, Winslow Township, New Jersey. We lost him about 20 years ago. SEAL Team 6 guy. I think about him every Memorial Day. I have a friend, I believe you know this story as well. His son is in the Army. They charge you for food in basic training, Coach. You have to pay for your meals as an Army or military recruit. What kind of country are we living in here? Let's take some of this gambling money. Let's put it into the salaries of our soldiers and our lost soldiers' families. Let's take care of these people that literally are giving us this ability to have this podcast and to gamble, right? without the U.S. military. We're not gambling, Coach. We're living in some crazy world in Europe, and we're betting on tennis or something. So God bless those troops, and let's think about them. Let's start voting for troops to be taken care of, more pay for their families, better conditions, and I love those people, and I thank them. I think about them every Memorial Day. I try to.
It's a great way to end the show. All right, Pez. Thanks, man. Been a very interesting conversation. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Later.
All right. So for Pez from Pez's Picks, this is Kevin Smith. This is our Hot Route Friday conversation. Hope everybody does have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we will catch you on the other side. Take care, everyone.